Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. Abernathy Cove was a settlement of weathered stone cottages and narrow lanes winding between salt-washed docks. Its lifeblood was the sea, fishermen casting nets at dawn, merchant ships unloading exotic wares, families listening for the cry of gulls. And yet in all its history, the cove had never known anything like the whispering fog. Mira Calloway, the town librarian, first heard of the phenomenon from old Bram, the harbor master. "It's like the past is alive again," he murmured over a mug of steaming tea. "I heard my grandfather calling my name, though he's been at rest these 50 years. Intrigued and unsettled, Mira gathered her notebooks. Voices carried stories of rebellion aboard a 17th century Dutch ship, of the laughter of smuggler children half buried by time, and of a long-lost love affair beneath the lighthouse's glow. Everyone in Abernathy Cove felt the pull of these spectral echoes, and a hush fell over daily life as neighbors listened for the voices in the mist. Dr. Edmund Faulkner, a visiting maritime historian from the City University, arrived by steam launch the day after the fog's first appearance. He was a tall man with spectacles that glinted behind perpetually furrowed brows, and a satchel weighed down by parchment maps and weathered logbooks. In Mira's musty library, he pored over ancient charts of Abernathy Cove's perilous shoals and the registry of ships lost to those treacherous waters. "The fog," he declared, "appears to be a temporal conduit, carrying voices locked in the waves themselves. I suspect it coincides with specific tidal patterns and atmospheric conditions that dredge up echoes of the past." At dawn, Faulkner and Mira stood on the dock as the mist curled around their ankles. They focused sensitive recording devices, microphones and spectrographs, hoping to capture the voices. The air trembled with a cry. "Abandoned ship! She's taking on water!" A sailor's terrified shout rang clear before dissolving into the seaborne haze. Faulkner's recorder clicked. "Remarkable," he whispered. "This is no mere hallucination." Old Bram led Mira and Faulkner to the cliffside, where the wreck of the HMS Vulture lay half submerged in the shallows, a gnarled skeleton of oak and iron. According to lore, the Vulture had run aground in 1723 during a fierce storm, carrying a treasure of parchment diaries from the Dutch East India Company. As they approached, the fog thickened into a living wall. Bram's lantern caught glinting fragments of cannon and a rotted mast. Then a voice drifted from the mist. "Light the lanterns, men! Our lives depend on it!" A phantom crewman's command. Bram's hands trembled with reverence. "My grandfather was one of those poor souls," he said. "He never made it home." Faulkner recorded the echo, while Mira gently traced her hand over a tarnished ship's bell. The voices aren't random, she realized. They're tied to places of great emotion, where final moments were charged with fear, hope, and regret. Dr. Helena Grant, a climatologist and friend of Faulkner's, arrived with specialized equipment: wind vanes, hygrometers, and a mobile Doppler lidar. She positioned arrays across the cove to measure moisture gradients and wind currents. Under the shifting canopy of fog, she discovered microclimates where sound waves trapped between temperature layers caused acoustic resonance. "These pockets," Helena explained, "create natural echo chambers. But there's something more, an anomalous frequency modulation that suggests the fog is acting as a temporal mirror, reflecting sound waves across centuries. By collecting synchronized audio samples and correlating them with historical logs, the team built a database of identified voices. Captain Josias van Houten commanding his crew, Annelies de Groot's lullaby, and whispers of smuggler codes used along the cliffs. At dusk, Mira ventured to the old lighthouse perched at the cove's western headland, a sentinel decommissioned when modern beacons took its place. The tower's winding stairs crumbled underfoot as the fog crept in. At its lantern room, she raised a small parabolic microphone. The fog thickened into a gray sea, and through it came the voice of Lydia Haversham, lighthouse keeper's daughter, singing, "Rest safe, my love, though night is long, within my heart I hold our song." Tears blurred Mira's vision. Researchers logging the audio shivered at the purity of the voice, preserved as though sleeping in a crystalline dream. For Lydia's fiancé had died at sea, his ship lost to a storm that claimed the lighthouse's final purpose. The team realized the fog was drawing out voices tied to unresolved emotions, songs and cries of those whose stories had no conclusion. As days passed, the fog's voices grew insistent, overlapping in a cacophony that disrupted daily life. Fishermen hesitated to set sail, and children enthralled often chased voices into the mist, only to return disoriented. Anxiety gripped Abernathy Cove. "We must find a way to calm the fog," Helena said, analyzing her data. "If we can broadcast a harmonizing frequency, a countertone, it might disrupt the resonance." Faulkner consulted historical records for lullabies and prayer chants used by sailors and keepers. Mira and Bram joined villagers in teaching each other these ancient songs, planning a grand concert to fill the cove with living voices, hopes, and prayers. On the night of the full harvest moon, the cove square filled with lanterns and makeshift benches. Fishermen, scholars, healers, and children gathered as the fog crept low. Faulkner's speakers stood atop wagons. Helena's instruments projected a stabilizing tone, a harmonic wave designed to gently dissolve the fog's time-laden resonance. Mira stepped to the center and began Lydia Haversham's lullaby. Bram followed with a smuggler's refrain. Villagers raised their voices in prayer, poets recited sonnets of loss and love, and children chanted runaway sailors' rhymes. The fog pulsed with every note. At first, the whispering fog resisted. Voices overlapped, distorted into discord. But as living voices, hearts full of present emotion, rose, the spectral echoes began to weave into harmony. The mist shimmered, then lifted in streams, carrying the ancient voices back into memory rather than haunting the present. When the final note faded, a hush fell. The fog thinned to a gentle veil, its voices subdued. Helena's devices showed the anomalous resonance dissipating. The cove's inhabitants wept with relief. That night, the team erected a ward of songs, a carved stone plinth engraved with lines from the lullaby and refrains of the smuggler's songs. They placed it at the cove's highest cliff. "Let living voices be the beacon," Faulkner intoned, warding the fog's hunger for forgotten sorrows. At first light, the sun pierced the horizon. For many in Abernathy Cove, it was the first dawn they had ever truly seen. Birds greeted the warmth, and the sea glittered with sky's reflection. The fog had receded beyond the horizon, leaving only memory of its haunting. Mira, Bram, Helena, and Faulkner stood on the cliff, watching sunlight dance on the waves. The ward of songs glowed in the dawn, a promise that the line between past and present need not be a prison, but a tapestry enriched by every voice, living or remembered. Years later, travelers who chance upon Abernathy Cove marvel at its gentle mists by early morning. No longer do those mists carry lost voices, but a soft hum, like harmonious breathing, rises from the ward of songs. Locals still share the lullaby and smuggler refrains around hearths, teaching each new generation that memories, however sorrowful, can find peace when met with open hearts and living song. And on quiet nights, if you stand at the cliff's edge under a harvest moon, you might just hear the faint echo of a time long past, a reminder that voices from another time need not haunt us, but can guide us toward unity, healing, and the boundless dawn. Eloise Harper was a young archivist new to Ravens Hollow, eager to escape her unquiet past. One gray morning, she sought shelter from the drizzle in Wren and Company. As she browsed shelves of tarnished silver and dried talismans, her eye fell upon the mirror's dull surface. Drawn by an inexplicable pull, she stepped closer. "Ah," said Mrs. Wren, emerging from the shadows, "I see you have discovered the mirror of hollow reflections. Few dare look upon it, for it reveals nightmares you thought long buried." Eloise's heartbeat quickened. Though her practical mind whispered skepticism, her heart urged her on. With trembling fingers, she reached out and saw not her own reflection, but a flicker of something darker. That night, Eloise returned home carrying the mirror wrapped in cloth. She placed it in her parlor and, when the clock struck midnight, unveiled it. At first, her reflection stared back, eyes wide with trepidation. Then the glass rippled like black water, and she saw the face of her late mother, twisted in sorrowful reproach. An echo of guilt Eloise had locked away since childhood. She gasped, recoiled, and covered the mirror once more. Tired and shaken, Eloise fell into fitful sleep, haunted by visions of her mother's voice, condemning and sorrowful. Dawn found her exhausted, her rational mind terrified that the mirror had tapped into her darkest corners. Yet a part of her, curious, defiant, wanted to look again. By day, Eloise confided in Dr. Sterling Hathaway, a folk magic scholar at Ravens Hollow University. Sterling, calm, bespectacled, and endlessly curious, inspected the mirror. He traced its ironwork and murmurings of runic etchings. A seal of nightmares, he called it, forged by an exiled dreamweaver to imprison unwanted terrors. "The mirror of hollow reflections," Sterling explained, "weaves your hidden fears into images so real you cannot distinguish them from memory. It draws upon your mind's darkest vaults. Use it once, and you risk unleashing shadows that may follow you into waking hours." Eloise listened, heart pounding. Knowledge provided no comfort when desire warred with caution. By nightfall, the mirror's call burned bright once more. Eloise returned home with Sterling's warning echoing in her mind. Still, as the clock told midnight, she unveiled the mirror again. This time, its surface showed her lost childhood friend, Mara, crying at a ruined carousel. An image Eloise had never spoken of, a memory she had buried. The carousel's music wound into her room, a tinkling that turned discordant and piercing. She pressed trembling hands to her ears but could not silence it. In terror, she fled to Sterling's flat, clutching the mirror cloth wrapped. Sterling opened late, sheltered Eloise, and captured the mirror under a protective ward. "No more," he said firmly. Eloise nodded, but sleep that night offered no rest. Mara's sobs reverberated through her dreams. Desperate, Eloise sought Madame Isabel Crane, Ravens Hollow's reputed medium. In a candlelit parlor scented with sage and frankincense, Isabel arranged candles in a circle around the mirror. Together they performed a clearing ritual, chanting ancient words, sprinkling salt, and burning juniper for protection. The candles flickered as the mirror's frame shuddered. The glass shimmered, but the images Jewel had seen appeared to recede. Yet Isabel warned, voice echoing in the chamber. "The mirror's hunger is not so easily sated. You may contain the reflections, but they whisper to you still, urging you to gaze again." Determined to break the mirror's hold, Eloise delved into her own past. With Sterling's help, she visited her childhood home, now abandoned, and uncovered an old diary of her mother's. In it, she found confessions of postpartum despair, a glimpse into her mother's hidden anguish. Tears streamed down Eloise's face. She had inherited not only her mother's face, but the unspoken pain that lay beneath. Armed with this newfound empathy and understanding, Eloise returned home and stood before the mirror. With deliberate calm, she spoke aloud the truths she had uncovered, her mother's suffering, her own guilt. and the secret sorrow that bound them. The glass rippled once, then grew still. Eloise felt a profound release, as if a great weight had lifted from her chest. The next night, the mirror lay silent under the full moon's glow. Eloise approached and gazed into its depths. For a moment, she saw only her reflection, eyes soft, unafraid. Then faintly, a single image surfaced, her mother's kind smile, clear and unshrouded by despair. Eloise recognized that the mirror had transformed. Instead of reflecting nightmares, it now reflected the hidden strength born of confronting them. Eloise entrusted the mirror of hollow reflections to Sterling and Isabel, who sealed it within a protective reliquary in the university's archives. There it would serve as a tool of healing, never to be used lightly, but made available to those who strove to face their deepest fears and transform them into compassion. Years later, scholars would gather to study the mirror's runes under safe wards. Seekers would come to learn the art of self-confrontation, and Ravens Hollow would remember Eleanor Harper's courage, the baker's daughter who dared look into the mirror's glass and turned her nightmares into light. In that city of whispered legends, the mirror's reflection came to promise not final darkness, but the power of understanding, forgiveness, and the hidden strength within every human heart. Eleanor Thorpe never believed in ghosts. As a practical-minded novelist, she preferred logic to legends, until she inherited her great-aunt Matilda's Victorian townhouse on the edge of Ravensford. The letter arrived sealed with black wax, its message brief. "I entrust you with my home and its mysteries. Beware the shifting room." Eleanor, grieving her aunt's passing and eager for solitude to write her next novel, dismissed the warning as eccentricity. On her first afternoon among the dusty volumes and sagging carpets, she discovered the room, a small chamber off the corridor, its door heavy oak, the air stale with disused hours. She noted its unusual square shape and the faded wallpaper, but thought little more until midnight approached. That night, Elena awoke when the grandfather clock below chimed 12. Drawn by a soft rumble, she crept down the corridor. Through the cracked door of the chamber, she saw the far wall inching sideways, revealing a narrow slit of darkness where only wallpaper had been moments before. Heart pounding, she plunged into the room. The walls realigned behind her with a final click, sealing off the doorway. Panic spiked as she pounded on the wood, realizing she was trapped. Then just as suddenly, the walls reversed, opening the path to the corridor once more. Shaking, Elena fled back to her study, her rational mind racing to explain the impossible. Perhaps an earthquake? A draft pushing the old wood? Yet deep inside, she sensed something else. The house itself was awake. By daylight, Elena scoured her aunt's journals and the town archives. Matilda's meticulous entries described years of recordings. Tonight, the south wall opened into a pitch-black vestibule. No footprints, no echo. Village records told of previous owners, an architect who disappeared, a family that decamped at dawn, swore they'd seen hidden stairs where none should be. Local newspaper clippings mentioned a curse of endless corridors and a tragic child who vanished, last seen chasing a rolling ball into a secret passage. The scholars of Ravensford had long abandoned the house, deeming it a madness-inducing labyrinth. Elena, fueled by equal parts dread and curiosity, set herself the task of mapping the room's changes, an impossible geometry that defied every principle of architecture. Realizing she could not confront the shifting chamber alone, Elena enlisted two allies. Marcus Blythe, a geometer fascinated by non-Euclidean spaces, arrived with measuring tape and theodolite. At her side was Dr. Rowena Finch, a parapsychologist who had tracked haunted houses from Edinburgh to Salem. At midnight, they reconvened in the chamber. Marcus measured angles that warped by degrees as the walls moved. Rowena recorded fluctuations in temperature and electromagnetic fields. They discovered the room's dimensions expanded by nearly 30% at one shift, yet no material was added. Elena felt both relief and deeper terror. Whatever unbound geometry animated the room lay far beyond mortal comprehension. In the following weeks, Marcus and Rowena uncovered hidden mechanisms, subterranean gears half buried in the basement, cryptic runes on the foundation stones. The runes matched symbols in Matilda's journal, tying the device to an order of medieval alchemists who believed space itself could be made fluid. One night, they traced the creaking conduits beneath the floor to a sealed hatch behind the room's fireplace. Carefully loosening rusted latches, they discovered a spiral staircase descending into darkness. A single oil lamp revealed damp stone walls inscribed with a warning: "Balance the stones of fear and hope, lest the chamber consume all." They realized the shifts were not random but governed by an arcane ritual, one that demanded equilibrium between light and dark, joy and sorrow. Determined to master the mechanism, Elena descended the steps alone. Below, she found a vast subchamber where piles of broken furniture and countless maps lay scattered. In the center, a dais held 4 stone obelisks, each bearing one of the 4 cardinal runes. Touching one, she experienced a rush of intense fear, drowning her senses in visions of her worst nightmares. Falling from cliffs, drowning in pitch-black water, isolation beneath endless walls. As she staggered back, trembling, the other obelisks glowed faintly. She understood then the obelisks were repositories of fear, each tethered to the room's restless spirit. To restore balance, she would have to rein in her fear, lest the chamber's hunger consume her sanity. That night, as the clock creaked toward midnight, Elena and her allies prepared a counter-ritual. Rowena arranged protective wards of silver dust around the room's perimeter. Marcus aligned his instruments to track spatial anomalies. Elena stood on the dais, palms pressed to the obelisks. In measured tones, she recited an incantation from her aunt's journal. "By courage born of mortal light, I seal my fears beyond this night. Let shadow bow to dawn's return, balance found in what I learn." With each line, a pulse of energy rippled through the chamber. The walls halted their shifting, quivering like a beast summoned. The obelisk glowed brighter, then fractured with a shower of motes of light that ascended the dais and vanished into the air. The hush that followed was absolute. As dawn's first glow crept through the dusty windows, the shifting ceased. In the quiet that followed, Elena realized her own fear had loosened its grip. Episodes of panic no longer seized her heart. Marcus measured the room. Its walls had realigned to a perfect rectangle, whose dimensions matched those on the original blueprints unearthed in the archives. Rowena's instruments showed no further fluctuations. The chamber, once a living maze, had been tamed, sealed by the balance of fear and hope. In the days that followed, the house itself seemed to exhale. Portraits hung straighter on the walls, floorboards settled into a steady timbre, and the air lost its electric charge. Elena reopened the fireplace hatch, sealing the gears and runes beneath fresh masonry. She placed the shattered obelisk fragments, vessels of her subdued fears, in a glass case in the parlor, a reminder of the trial she had endured. Dawn's reach awoke to a pale sunrise, the first in centuries. Villagers, shielding their eyes against the light, emerged to witness the dawn cast long shadows across the rooftops. Word of the sunrise spread rapidly. Children laughed in the streets, mothers wept with wonder, and historians hurried to document the miracle. The house, once an object of terror, became a sign of redemption, a testament to human resolve over darkness. Years later, Elena Thorne's memoir, The Room of Shifting Walls, became a classic of the supernatural. Scholars, architects, and dreamers visited the house, now restored and opened as the Nightwarden Museum, to glimpse the room itself, its walls once fluid, now solid and safe. Occasionally, visitors claimed to feel a faint tremor at the stroke of midnight, as though distant memories of the old shifts lingered beneath the stones. Elena, older now, still lived in the house. She kept her great-aunt's journal, recording the visitors' stories in its margins. Each entry reminded her of the delicate balance between fear and hope, and of the power that lies in facing one's own shadows. Outside, the sun shone every day, but in the hearts of those who walked the corridor behind the once shifting walls, a flicker of that midnight magic remained, an eternal whisper that even the darkest nights can yield to the dawn. In the hamlet of Dawn's Reach, perched at the forest's skeletal border, the sun's first light had not shone for generations. Children learned of sunlight only from faded tapestries in the village commons, and the word day had become a myth more than a memory. Thurlin, the village's young apiarist, often climbed the rickety watchtower at night to peer into the endless thicket. There, beneath the soft glow of lanterns, the trees stilled the wind. He could almost feel the weight of centuries pressing against the tree trunks, a lullaby of darkness that beckoned with both dread and longing. When a stranger arrived at Dawn's Reach with a riddle on sunlit parchment, curiosity stirred in Thurlin's heart. The stranger, known only as Mira, claimed to be a daughter of the Sun Watchers, an ancient order said to guard the last fragments of daylight. In her slender hands, she bore a crystal vial containing a single, golden drop of pure light. "This fragment," she whispered, "can shatter the curse if we can return it to its rightful place." Her voice, soft as dawn's promise, ignited a spark in Thurlin's chest. For the first time, someone spoke of restoring the day. Word of Mira's quest spread quickly. In the tavern's smoky warmth, 4 souls volunteered. Thurlin, the beekeeper's son, whose every dream was colored by imagined sunlight. Alara, a stoic herbalist whose remedies thrived on nocturnal blooms, now desperate to see how pines swayed in daylight. Cormac, a stooped scholar driven by a craving to read ancient scrolls that spoke of sunlit ages. Serene, a former forest ranger awakened by nightmares of her lost patrol, vanished within the Ebonwood decades ago. At twilight's edge, under a sky they could only imagine, the 4 set foot upon the ancient path into the forest of eternal twilight, carrying Mira's precious vial. Lanterns in hand, they took their first steps into a world unlit by sun, bound by their shared hope and the hush of the eternal dusk. Beneath the stifling canopy, the air was thick and damp, filled with the scent of moss and 1,000 hushed sighs. Dawn, if it ever came, was swallowed whole by endless boughs. Ilara gathered luminescent mushrooms for warmth, while Cormac decoded faint runes traced along the lichen-crusted stones. Serene, ever vigilant, heard whispers in the shadows, echoes of those lost to the forest. Thurlin, lantern held high, imagined the world beyond. Fields of gold, sapphire skies, the laughter of a sunlit breeze. They followed the path northward, tusk-like roots forcing them to step with care. Shadows drifted at the corner of their eyes, but when they turned, no one stood there. It was as if the forest exhaled memories, snatches of laughter, cries of anguish, the soft whisper of children at play before twilight claimed them. After days of travel, the group stumbled upon a hidden glade where phosphorescent flowers bloomed against midnight green ferns. At the center stood a stone basin, its waters still and mirror-like. Cormac knelt to inspect the carvings, wellspring of forgotten dreams. Legend held that this pool once reflected the sky's glory. Now it lay dark, its face a void. Mira approached, uncorking the vial. "Here," she said, "we offer the fragment of sun." Thurlin placed a single drop upon the water's surface. For an instant, the pool blazed with a brilliant golden shimmer, rippling outward like sunlight over still fields. But the light quickly receded, swallowed by the basin. A low rumble tremored through the ground, and the forest around them sighed, its branches shifting in a sudden gust that carried both promise and foreboding. No sooner had the echo of that light died than apparitions emerged from the shadows. Tall, slender forms draped in spectral foliage, eyes like hollowed stars. These were the gloom heralds, ancient guardians of the sun's lost fragment. They carried the sorrow of countless ages, voices like wind through dead leaves. Only the key of memory can unlock the sun, they intoned. You must retrieve the keys, sorrow, courage, and sacrifice, before the dawn can break. The heralds vanished, leaving the travelers shaken. Their quest had only begun, and the road ahead demanded they confront their deepest truths. Their first journey led to the marsh of silent lament, where the water lay thick as ink and sorrow formed pale, wailing fog. Each traveler was forced to face a personal grief. Thurlin relived his mother's death, Alara her brother's abandonment, Cormac the loss of his fiancée to plague, Serene the guilt of the patrol she could not save. By embracing their sorrow, naming it, feeling its ache, they forged the key of sorrow, a slender shard of marsh crystal that pulsed with mournful light. Next, they braved the labyrinth of husked oaks, an endless tangle of thorny trunks said to twist the brave back upon themselves. Shadows morphed into their own doubts. You lack the heart, it hissed. To claim the key of courage, each had to step beyond fear. Thurlin, the dark of night, Alara, the sting of loss, Cormac, the loneliness of truth, Serene, the face of failure. Their courage manifested in a sword forged of living wood, its blade gleaming in the gloom. At the mountain's heart, the group confronted the final trial, the peak of dying stars where the cold was absolute and the wind bit like shards of glass. To claim the key of sacrifice, they were told one must lay down something precious. Cormac surrendered his priceless scrolls. Alara burned her mother's heirloom herbs. Serene left her ranger's cloak. Thurlin offered Mira's golden vial itself, his single hope of dawn. The peak rumbled, and upon its frozen summit, 3 sharp keys emerged, iron wrought, but the golden fragment lay unclaimed. Descending scarred but triumphant, they returned to the forest's heart, where the ancient obelisk of the Night Wardens awaited. In its carved throne, the vial's fragment shimmered lost without a host. Alina placed sorrow, courage, and sacrifice keys into the obelisk's indentations. Brass gears ground as the obelisk opened, revealing a hollow chamber where the golden fragment would rest. Thurlin approached, hands shaking, and set the vial within. A resonant chime rang, like a heartbeat returning. Light burst forth in a slow dawn, dispersing shadows into motes of gold. The trees groaned as their canopy receded, branches parting to reveal the sky's first blush of rose and amber. The gloom heralds smiled, their purpose fulfilled, and melted into the morning mist. As the sun rose over Hallowmere, its brilliance bathed the valley for the first time in centuries. Wildflowers opened their petals, birds sang with jubilant chords. Laughter rang out as villagers emerged in awe. Dawn's reach welcomed back day. Children danced in the sunlight in the forest, once a realm of eternal dusk, became the wood of new dawn, its shadows gentle and fleeting beneath the brilliant sky. Thurlin, Alara, Cormac, and Serene watched from the ancient bridge at the forest's edge. Mira stood before the obelisk, key of silent fears cleansed, its purpose fulfilled. We have banished the shadow of dread, she said softly, but let us never forget the sorrow, the courage, the sacrifice that brought us to this dawn. Each friend nodded, hearts full. The Watchers of Sunset and the Guardians of Tomorrow would remember that fear can be locked away, but only through the light of memory, that courage is forged in darkness, and that the highest sacrifice may open the world to new hope. Though wind and time reshaped the land, the keys remain, scattered among the Night Warden's vault, whispered in song, and etched into the annals of history. And on clear days when the sun's warmth spills across every petal and stone, the people of Hallowmere look toward the forest of new dawn with reverent smiles. knowing that the light was reclaimed not by magic alone, but by the quiet strength of ordinary hearts. The key of silent fears rests sealed once more, its promise eternal, that courage, sorrow, and sacrifice can unlock the darkest of nights and bring the dawn of a brighter world. Long before Gray Spire became a quiet, isolated village, nestled amidst towering evergreens and rocky cliffs, its lands had once teemed with life, commerce, and turbulent intrigue. According to time-worn oral histories passed down by firelight, the bell was originally cast during an age of turmoil and uncertainty by a master bell founder named Calum Duran. Legend has it that Calum, a man of keen perception and deep sorrow, forged the bell with metal from a fallen meteor and infused it with incantations gleaned from ancient, forbidden texts. His artistry was beyond mortal measure, and thus the bell came to possess an eerie aura, a capacity to sense and portend misfortune long before it descended upon the lands. The earliest accounts describe the bell tolling under a blood-red sunset, as if the heavens themselves wept for the sorrows it foretold. Over the centuries, as kingdoms crumbled and the tides of fortune shifted with the whims of fate, the bell's reputation grew. It became known by many names: a herald of doom, a bell of unquiet souls, and ultimately the bell of destiny's echo. To the local folk, the bell served as a cosmic reminder that while joy could be fleeting, misfortune was an ever-present specter lurking at the edges of time. Gray Spire, a modest settlement clinging to the foot of rugged, mist-covered mountains, had long learned to live with the bell's eerie toll. The villagers, a hardy and superstitious folk, built their lives around its ominous chime. In Gray Spire's central square, the ancient bell tower stood as a silent sentinel, a reminder of the precarious balance between fortune and misfortune. Stories abounded of families spared disaster by heedful avoidance of ill-omened days, of lovers reunited amid sudden turns of fate spurred on by the bell's warning, and of farmers who managed to harvest their fields just before a devastating storm struck. Among the residents was a young man named Everett Sinclair, whose family had been both blessed and cursed by the bell's toll. Everett's mother, a gentle soul renowned for her kindness, always warned him, "When the bell tolls, listen well. It speaks in a language of fate that can guide you, but also warns you of the shadows to come." Growing up under the somber melody of the bell, Everett harbored both fear and fascination. He felt that the bell was not merely a harbinger of sorrow, but also an oracle, a mystical guide that, if he could understand its language, might enable him to change the course of impending misfortune. Thus began his lifelong quest to decipher the cryptic tolls and master the art of forewarning, driven by a desire to protect those he loved and to reshape destiny itself. One storm-laden autumn evening, as dark clouds loomed heavy over Gray Spire and the wind carried a forlorn dirge, the bell began to toll, its sound deep, resonant, and laden with a sense of impending doom. Everett, who was then a young apprentice to the village clockmaker, listened from his workshop as the mournful chimes rolled across the valley like distant thunder. That night, the bell's toll was unlike any he had ever heard. It was as if each peal carried with it fragments of a prophecy. In the frigid air, the villagers spoke of ominous signs: livestock falling ill, crops withering prematurely, and a mysterious figure seen wandering the outskirts of the settlement. Everett, troubled by these ill omens, set out immediately to investigate. With a lantern in hand and his heart pounding like the bell's solemn drum, he traced the sound of the toll to various corners of the town. Along the winding paths and shadowed alleys, he found evidence of misfortune: a broken gate symbolizing fractured unity, a wilted bouquet left as an offering at an abandoned shrine, and cryptic symbols etched into ancient stones that he soon recognized from his studies of old prophecies. Everett's investigation culminated in a heart-stopping revelation when he discovered that the toll had coincided with the disappearance of a local child, a tragedy so profound it rattled the town's very soul. Though the connection was unclear, the event confirmed what the legends had long foretold. The bell always rang before misfortune struck. Determined to understand the true nature of the bell's ominous power, Everett sought the wisdom of two venerable figures in Grayspire: Professor Alistair Mortimer, a reclusive scholar whose extensive knowledge of ancient myth and symbolic lore was unrivaled, and Madame Celeste Duval, a seer whose visions of fate had guided many a desperate soul. In the quiet sanctuary of the town's dusty library, Professor Mortimer pored over time-worn manuscripts, deciphering archaic scripts that hinted at a primordial connection between the bell's chimes and the world's inherent cycle of creation and destruction. In parallel, Madame Duval welcomed Everett into her modest, candlelit studio, where the heavy scent of incense and the soft rustle of ancient tarot cards filled the space. With eyes that seemed to see beyond the veil of time, Celeste shared with him a vision, an overwhelming tapestry of images, flickering scenes of catastrophic storms, sudden separations of loved ones, and the anguished cry of nature herself as if mourning the loss of life. "The bell," she intoned in a voice both fragile and resolute, "is not merely a harbinger of ill fortune, it is a sentinel that marks the turning of fate's wheel. Every toll heralds both an ending and a beginning, a call to heed the balance of life." Her words, imbued with an almost sacred urgency, spurred Everett to dedicate his every waking hour to deciphering the intricate symbolism of the tolls. Together, the scholar and the seer collaborated, delving into ancient myths, comparing visions with historical events, and mapping out a pattern in the bell's unpredictable tolling. Their combined efforts painted a picture of inevitability. The bell was not random, but a preordained signal, a ritualistic marker that occurred when the natural world was about to undergo a significant upheaval. In the depths of the ancient library, amidst stacks of forgotten lore and brittle scrolls, Everett and Professor Mortimer unearthed a peculiar manuscript. The text, known simply as the Book of Prophecies, dated back centuries and contained a series of cryptic aphorisms, each paired with descriptions of disasters that had befallen the region over time. One passage read, "When the bell's sorrowful tone doth sound, the harvest of tears shall soon abound. A shadow will pass, and grief will unfurl, marking the doom of both heart and world." This poetic verse both chilled and fascinated Everett. The manuscript detailed events that seemed too precise to be mere coincidence: natural disasters, epidemics, and personal tragedies whose timing echoed the bell's toll. The more he studied the manuscript, the more Everett began to perceive the bell not as a curse, but as a tragic reminder of the fragile balance between fortune and sorrow, between joy and inevitable decay. Inspired by his findings, Everett began to document every toll, every corresponding event, and every minor or great misfortune that struck Grayspire. His meticulous records, combined with the observations of Madame Duval, gradually formed a chilling correlation. When the bell tolled, misfortune was never far behind. Yet hidden within the despair was a subtle hint, a glimmer of hope that if one understood these ominous signals, one might be able to deflect them, or at least prepare for their occurrence. As winter crept over Grayspire with biting winds and frosted streets, the bell's tolling became more frequent and ominous. One particularly frigid night, after the bell had sung its mournful dirge for what seemed like the 100th time in a single night, a series of disasters struck. A raging blizzard descended unexpectedly, trapping families in their homes. A fragile bridge on the outskirts of the village collapsed under the sudden weight of ice and snow, and a mysterious illness claimed the lives of several vulnerable townsfolk. In the aftermath, grief and fear coiled through the streets like a living thing, and the villagers, terrified and bewildered, rallied in the hope of understanding and averting further calamity. Everett's records, now considered vital, were read aloud in community meetings. With the guidance of Professor Mortimer and the prophetic insights of Madame Duval, he urged the people to heed the bell's somber warning. "The bell tolls not to condemn us," he would say, his voice both earnest and resolute, "but to remind us that fate has its rhythms. We must listen, learn, and prepare. In our unity, there is strength to weather any storm." A sense of cautious determination began to spread through Gracespire. Under the banner of collective resilience, neighbors began sharing resources, fortifying their homes, and preparing for future misfortune. It was as if the very act of facing the bell's prophecy together imbued them with a reluctant hope, a belief that understanding the future might empower them to shape it. In the wake of the calamities, Everett, Madame Duval, and a dedicated team of volunteers initiated a series of initiatives aimed at protecting the community. They organized emergency workshops where practical survival skills were taught alongside sessions on meditation and stoic reflection. People learned to interpret small changes in nature, a falling leaf, an unusual shift in the wind, as potential portents of the bell's next toll. The villagers, once paralyzed by fear, found solace in the shared sense of purpose that emerged from their collective efforts. Amid these turbulent times, Everett experienced a profound personal trial. Late one stormy night, when the winds outside howled like the tormented souls of a forgotten past, he found himself alone at the ancient bell tower. With only the bitter whisper of the storm for company, he confronted the source of his own fears, the relentless, echoing toll of the bell. In that solitary moment of crisis, amidst the tempest's wrath, Everett realized that the power to endure lay not in escaping fate, but in embracing it with courage. Surrounded by the elements, with rain pelting his face and the cacophony of the storm deafening his thoughts, he pledged to dedicate his life to the service of his people, to continue chronicling the bell's prophetic tolls, and to champion the resilience of the human spirit, no matter how dire the omen. With the town banding together in the face of perpetual misfortune, a new chapter began to unfold in Gracespire. Everett's compendium of toll records and historical calamities grew into an invaluable guide, a book of community resilience that synthesized ancient prophecies with modern preparedness. Families gathered in the town hall, poring over charts that correlated the bell's toll with various natural and human-induced events, seeking patterns that might enable them to foresee impending disasters. Under the careful tutelage of Professor Mortimer, the villagers learned that while the future was indeed uncertain, knowledge was a powerful tool. They held workshops on predictive analytics and even conducted small experiments with weather instruments, while Madame Duval offered her intuitive guidance. The collaborative spirit infused new hope into Gracespire, with each citizen believing that even if misfortune was foretold, it could be met with preparedness and grace. Everett's work, entitled Echoes of Doom and Hope, became more than a record. It was a chronicle of survival, interwoven with the poetry of life and the stubborn resilience of a community that refused to be defined by despair. The book was shared far and wide, its pages a testament to the strength born of unity in the face of inevitable adversity. In time, as the seasons turned and the disasters of that dark winter began to recede into memory, the people of Gracespire discovered something remarkable. The bell, though it continued to toll in ominous tones, began to carry with it not solely a warning of despair, but also the subtle promise of renewal. New growth emerged in the charred landscapes of past disasters. The once tragic events forged a bond that united the community, inspiring innovative approaches to safeguard their homes and hearts. Families rebuilt, schools adapted, and the town, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. Everett, now recognized as the voice of Gracespire's resilience, continued his work with a tempered hope. The tolling of the bell was a reminder of the fragility of life, but also an affirmation of their collective ability to face the future. In his later writings, he spoke of the bell as both a curse and a blessing, a dual-edged instrument that, while ominously foretelling misfortune, also spurred the community to act, to come together, and to forge a future in which preparedness and compassion reigned. Art and literature flourished in Grayspire during these years. Local poets composed verses about the beauty of enduring hope in the face of inevitable loss. Painters captured the dramatic interplay of shadow and light as seen in the twilight hours when the bell tolled. Musicians wrote symphonic pieces that echoed the deep rhythms of the village's heartbeat. The town, once defined solely by its sorrows, became a beacon of communal strength and innovation, proving that even when fate seems to speak only of doom, there is always room for hope and renewal. Decades later, the legend of the bell that tolls before misfortune strikes had become inseparable from Grayspire's identity. The ancient bell tower stood as a solemn monument at the town's heart, a relic that, through its eerie prophecies, had woven generations together in the struggle to understand and overcome the caprices of fate. Everett, now an elder with a quiet wisdom etched into every line of his face, often sat by the tower on calm, reflective evenings, listening to the distant, resonant tolls that carried the echoes of both past calamities and the unyielding hope that had sustained the community. In one final act of reflection, he penned a meditation titled "The Song of Fate and Renewal," in which he mused, "We are bound by the twin threads of destiny and courage. In every toll a warning, in every shadow the echo of hope, for though misfortune may knock upon our door, it is the strength of our hearts that determines what will be built anew." As he shared his final thoughts with the gathered townsfolk at a memorial service for those lost in past tragedies, a profound hush fell over the assembly. In that moment, the bell tolled one last time, a deep, sonorous chime that seemed to signify not an end, but a perpetual cycle of remembrance, unity, and rebirth. The people of Grayspire, united by their shared journey, vowed to honor the lessons of the past while embracing an uncertain but brighter future. Long after Everett's final words had faded from the world, the legacy of Grayspire and its fateful bell endured. The bell tower, a steadfast guardian against the passage of time, continued to call out its solemn warnings, guiding subsequent generations as both a reminder and an inspiration. The pages of echoes of doom and hope remained in circulation, a cherished relic of a time when fate spoke in solemn tones, and a community rose to meet it with unwavering resolve. In quiet moments, when the wind carries the soft murmur of memories, even children and newcomers to Grayspire swear they can feel the intangible pulse of the bell, a heartbeat of destiny that unites all who call this resilient town home. For in every toll, there lingers a spark of human perseverance, an eternal promise that though misfortune may come, the indomitable spirit of hope and community will always prevail. Thus, the story of the bell that tolls before misfortune strikes stands as an epic narrative, a testament to the intertwined nature of fate and human fortitude, sorrow and renewal, and the unbreakable bond that unites a community in its darkest hours, guiding them ever onward toward a future filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings. In the small village of Eversong, nestled at the edge of a vast forest and crisscrossed by the meandering Silver Mist River, the legend of the riverbank had been passed down for generations. Villagers spoke of the bank's uncanny property. At dusk, when the sun dipped low and the sky blushed with the hues of farewell, the flowing waters would catch the echoes of forgotten songs. It was said that long ago, when the village was a flourishing center of trade and art, bards and musicians would gather at the river's edge, their instruments resonating in harmony with the natural world. Over time, as memories blurred and dreams were set adrift, those ancient songs became whispers carried by the wind. Young Nora, an aspiring musician with an inextinguishable curiosity and a yearning to unearth lost beauty, was entranced by these stories. Since childhood, she had spent countless afternoons by the silver mist, listening to the gentle ripple of the water and imagining that somewhere within its ceaseless flow lay the remnants of forgotten ballads. Her grandmother used to say, "The river remembers, child. It sings for those who listen with their heart." Nora's life would soon become a quest to explore these legends and reclaim the music of the past. One crisp autumn evening, when the leaves fell like soft embers from ancient trees and the sky wore a rich tapestry of crimson and gold, Nora ventured to the riverbank with her old beloved violin tucked under her arm. As twilight merged with the approaching night, the world around her seemed to hush in reverence. Sitting on a smooth, time-worn stone, she closed her eyes and listened. At first, there was only the gentle lapping of water and the rustle of wind through the reeds. Then gradually a faint melody arose, so soft it could have been the sigh of the river itself, a sound that felt both melancholy and wondrous. It was as if unseen voices had taken up the strings of the wind, weaving a lullaby of sorrow and forgotten hope. Awed and overcome with emotion, Nora began to play along. Her violin's notes danced tentatively with the ambient tune, and as they mingled in the air, a profound calm washed over her. In that instant, she understood that the riverbank was not merely a place of natural beauty, but a repository of memories, where the songs of generations past lived on. She vowed then that she would capture these echoes, preserve them, and let them guide her in discovering the hidden histories of her village. In the weeks following that transcendent night, Nora's search for the truth behind the river's forgotten songs deepened into an obsession. She spent her days in the Eversong Village Archive, a small room filled with yellowed manuscripts, brittle scrolls, and faded portraits of long-gone ancestors. There she discovered references to an era when the villagers celebrated music as the very essence of life. Dusty records describe festivals where bards competed in lyrical contests on the riverbank under a moonlit sky, their voices carrying the collective joys and sorrows of the community. One brittle, handwritten note mentioned a melody of the ages that was believed to be lost when the river's course shifted centuries ago. Encouraged by these leads, Nora began to piece together the fragments of the past. She interviewed the oldest residents of Eversong, whose eyes shone with nostalgic recollections. They spoke of a time when the river echoed with the songs of beloved minstrels, when every note was a story of love, triumph, and tragedy. These stories, rich with personal loss and communal celebration, wove a tapestry of emotion that transcended time. Nora's own heart swelled with both grief and hope at the thought of retrieving those sacred memories and reviving the lost lore of her people. One particularly serene night, when the veil of twilight was at its deepest and the air shimmered with ethereal calm, Nora returned to the riverbank determined to record the elusive melody. Under the gentle glow of a crescent moon, armed with her violin, a portable recorder, and a deep sense of anticipation, she settled beside the water. As the minutes ticked by, the familiar lull of the river gave way to a crescendo of whispered tunes. In the subtle interplay of natural sounds and ghostly harmonies, Nora captured a symphony of forgotten emotions. The soft notes of lost love, the bittersweet strains of unmet dreams, and the silent ode to a collective past that had been reclaimed by the passage of time. As she played, the music seemed to shift with her own feelings. At times the melody danced with joyful brightness, while at other moments it sank into a profound sorrow that mirrored the ancient grief of the land. Nora's heart wavered between rapture and despair, but in that delicate balance, she felt an inexplicable unity with the generations that had come before. Her recorder captured the raw, unadulterated sound of the night, a living archive of the riverbank's whispered songs. Upon returning to the village, Nora shared her recordings with her mentor, an elderly musician named Maestro Salvatore, whose life had been steeped in both the art and the mystery of music. Salvatore, eyes glistening with reminiscence and respect, listened intently as the haunting notes filled his modest study. After a long, reflective silence, he revealed a long-forgotten manuscript passed down through his family, a lyrical compendium believed to have been penned by one of the greatest minstrels of Eversong's golden age. The manuscript, written in flowing, elegant script and adorned with musical notations, described the Song of the River, a legendary melody said to hold the power to heal broken hearts and unite lost souls. Salvatore explained that the manuscript had been separated into fragments over the years, its verses scattered like petals in the wind. The echoes captured on Nora's recorder bore a striking resemblance to some of the long-lost lines. With these revelations, they surmised that the river itself had somehow preserved the melody, a living memory of the town's ancient spirit. Together, they embarked on a quest to reconstruct the complete song, piecing together clues from the manuscript, local legends, and the captured recordings. Their collaboration blossomed into nightly sessions of shared creativity and introspection, as they sought not only to revive a forgotten tune, but also to understand its deeper, transformative significance. News of the rediscovered melody spread slowly among the villagers, sparking a renewed interest in the old traditions of Eversong. Recognizing the power of communal memory, Nora, Maestro Salvatore, and a group of inspired townsfolk decided to organize the Ritual of Remembrance, a celebration to honor the legacy of the river's forgotten songs. On the eve of the summer solstice, when the long daylight yielded to a mystic twilight, the community gathered at the riverbank. Under a sky blushed with the colors of departure and promise, lanterns were hung from ancient trees, and the air was filled with the soft murmur of prayers and whispered wishes. Families, young lovers, and those burdened by loss took their places in a circle around a makeshift stage, where instruments both old and new awaited their moment. At the stroke of midnight, the ritual began. With delicate gestures, each participant recited verses from the recovered manuscript, and Maestro Salvatore strummed his lute in perfect harmony. Nora, standing at the center with her violin, began to play the reconstructed melody, the Song of the River, a tune that seemed to draw from the very depths of the past. As the notes unfurled into the night, something remarkable occurred. The river, as if awakened by the chorus of human voices and the tender strains of music, shimmered with an otherworldly light. The gentle murmur of the current joined the harmonious refrains, and the entire scene took on a transcendent beauty, a living symphony of remembrance that bound the community together in shared hope and healing. For that enchanted moment, every heart in Eversong beat in unison with the timeless music of the river, and every forgotten dream was given new life in the gentle embrace of sound and memory. In the months that followed the ritual of remembrance, the effects of the revived melody rippled throughout Eversong. The riverbank, once a solitary place of whispered secrets, became a gathering ground for dreamers, artists, and those in search of solace. New festivals were organized, and the community embraced its past with a fervor that bridged the gap between bygone eras and the present. Paintings were created that depicted the luminous interplay of water, light, and shadow. Sculptures captured the ephemeral nature of sound, and poets penned verses that celebrated the eternal dance of remembrance. Nora's recordings of the river's song became treasured relics, broadcast over local radio, and shared at community events. People discovered that the melody carried with it a subtle, transformative power, a reminder that while our memories may fade with the passing of time, the beauty of our collective experiences endures. The song was more than music. It was a vessel of healing, capable of mending hearts fractured by the relentless march of time. It whispered of hope and offered a bridge between generations, a reminder that even in the quiet sorrow of loss, there is a beauty to be found. Inspired by the resurgence of ancient music, Nora and Maestro Salvatore began to delve deeper into the scholarly studies of Eversong's history. With the help of Professor Edmund Callaway, an expert in local lore and musical antiquities, they embarked on a rigorous research project. Archival documents, old family recordings, and even folklore from neighboring villages were unearthed and studied in painstaking detail. Together, they theorized that the river's echoes were not accidental. They were the manifestation of a long-held belief among the earliest inhabitants that the river was a living record of every joy and sorrow experienced along its banks. Their research culminated in the publication of a comprehensive volume titled Melodies of Memory, the Living Song of Eversong, which meticulously documented the history of the forgotten songs, the evolution of the ancient melody, and its profound impact on the village's cultural identity. The book was celebrated not only as a groundbreaking work in musical antiquity, but also as a moving tribute to the enduring power of collective memory. It inspired other communities to explore their own ties to tradition and to cherish the ephemeral beauty of their shared histories. For many individuals, the rediscovered melody proved to be a catalyst for personal transformation. Among those whose lives were deeply touched was a woman named Lydia Hart, who had long suffered from the weight of unresolved grief following the loss of her husband. When Lydia first heard the Song of the River during one of the community gatherings, something within her stirred, a long dormant hope that perhaps her own story of sorrow could be rewritten. Over subsequent nights, Lydia embraced the melody, letting its gentle cadence wash over her heart. In the shimmering reflection of the river, she found the strength to confront her past and to begin the slow, painful process of healing. Soon her quiet tears turned to smiles, and she emerged as an emblem of resilience, a living testament to the transformative power of embracing one's memories, both bright and dark. Lydia's journey resonated with others, and soon more villagers began to share their experiences of personal healing inspired by the song. The riverbank became a communal sanctuary, a place where the act of listening to the whispered echoes of the past was not an admission of defeat, but a declaration of hope. In the collective warmth of shared vulnerability, the people of Eversong discovered that the bridges between what was lost and what could be reborn are built with every note, every memory, and every quiet act of remembrance. Years later, as the vibrant spirit of Eversong continued to flourish, the legacy of the riverbank and its forgotten songs became a cornerstone of the community's identity. The annual Festival of Remembrance had grown into a grand celebration of life, bridging the gap between past and future through art, music, and shared reflection. The riverbank itself was preserved as a sacred landmark, a place where every evening at dusk, when the whispers grew louder and the lights softened into a golden haze, individuals from all walks of life gathered to remember, to dream, and to connect with something greater than themselves. Nora's recordings, the scholarly works of Professor Callaway and Maestro Salvatore, and the heartfelt accounts of those transformed by the song all converged to form a tapestry of cultural heritage that was as intricate as it was enduring. Over time, the melodies of memory not only echoed along the river's edge, but also became a source of inspiration for future generations. Poets, musicians, scholars, and dreamers who saw in the whispered songs the promise that even the faded notes of the past can spark a new dawn. In the quiet twilight of a setting sun, as the river flowed on with its timeless murmur, the people of Eversong would pause and listen, a silent communion with the echoes of forgotten songs that spoke of love, loss, hope, and the eternal dance of memory. Long after the initial spark of rediscovery had illuminated the hearts of those in Eversong, The legend of the riverbank where whispers grow louder at dusk endured like a timeless lullaby. Visitors from distant lands now journey to witness the spectral beauty of the river, to stand upon its banks and listen, and to feel the gentle pulse of history mingled with dreams yet to be realized. In every ripple, in every sigh of the wind through the tall grasses, the forgotten songs of the past resound, a soft, melancholy chorus that promises renewal, connection, and the unyielding power of memory. Thus, the story of the riverbank that echoes forgotten songs lives on, a sprawling epic of personal transformation, communal healing, and the delicate interplay of light, sound, and memory. It stands as a tribute to the idea that even the quietest whispers of the past hold the power to inspire us, to guide us through the corridors of time, and to remind us that in every note there lies the eternal promise of a new beginning.